Today, on the $1 Million Mind.
And we have this misconception that I have to be this multi-billionaire to have an estate, but that $200,000, $500,000 house that you own, that's a part of your legacy. That's like one of your biggest assets. So what do you want to happen to it if anything ever happens to you? Okay, so guys, here, I'm going to be honest. I'm going to vote. I have a responsibility to vote. I'm going to vote how I'm supposed to vote. Let me just put that where that is. But whenever a president makes a promise to you, they can't fulfill those promises.
Affordable housing is an interesting concept because I feel like there's a right way to do it and then there's still a wrong way to do it. How can we avoid like finding out things too late?
So if there was benchmarks established throughout the process, and this is just a critique of the system. So say, for instance, the benchmark is we received appraisal this day. We reviewed the appraisal within 48 hours to let them know what needs to be done. Then it wouldn't be a 2-week period. But I think the difficulty is, do we have enough people doing these roles?
What's going on, millionaires? It's your guy Kai Speaks back for another episode of the $1 Million Mind podcast. Super excited as always, just to have conversations every single day to kind of like change our perspective and our mindsets around money, mindset, and entrepreneurship. We got Pavielle Dortch back in the building. Last time we had Pavi on the show, I think it was December, January. But we was talking about like the trust fund babies and, real estate and the combination of, trust funds and real estate. And it was just a really high level conversation that, opened my mind up to so many different ideas about generational wealth and real estate. I wanted to invite Pavielle back on the show this time around because I just feel like it was just time to have her back to have another different type of conversation surrounding real estate. I've been through some things in real estate that I called Pavielle, to get her. I say, hey, Pavi, I'm going through the situation. And I thought I had one idea. She's like, no, you got to look at it from this perspective. But we'll get into that later. But Pavi, it's just great to have you back on the show. To our listeners about anything that might have changed like since you've been on. I think that was December?
Yeah. Nothing. Well, I'm rebranding, so I'm creating this concept called the closing house. You know how like we all go to Waffle House and we get that
it's like an
all-star and
yeah.
you just run through it. So I'm trying to figure out how to build my closing firm to be more like a Waffle House, where it's like this efficient system. You run through it, and then if there's something complicated, you get farmed off to another company. But I want it like that: come in, get your waffle, and get out kind of feel. So we're working on building that, and then we're working on building our estate planning business so that it's more present, so people can come in and discuss their issues or their desires, because it's really desires of how they want their legacy to be left.
Yeah, for those that might have missed the conversation we had at the top of the year, re-explain the concept of estate planning. Who is estate planning for? In which cases would you need to, go to you for some estate planning, just so we can get some context? Because I think that's kind of what we're going to be talking about a little bit.
Yeah. So estate planning to me is for everybody. And we have this misconception that I have to be this multi-billionaire to have an estate. But that $200,000, $500,000 house that you own, that's a part of your legacy. That's like one of your biggest assets. So what do you want to happen to it if anything ever happens to you? And so I've been looking at estate planning a little differently, because we always look at it as like, oh God, I'm about to die and I don't want to do this. But it's planning for life. You're planning for what my life looks like after I have my plan in place. And how am I going to use my plan to build something bigger? Because there are these insurance policies that you can get that helps build generational wealth, or that you can borrow against during your life. And those go into your estate plan. So estate plans are for everybody. But most importantly, to our baby boomers, like our moms and our grandmas who are like, girl, I don't know who I'm going to leave this house to, but I want it to stay in the family. So we want just that open family discussion about it, because it's for everybody. Yeah.
I think this has been coming up a couple times in a lot of conversations we've been having. Is just we're starting to realize that whole term, and we talked about it again, was like stay out of grown folks' business. It just did no one any justice, in our community. It's just we have to get comfortable with you know, having these conversations and not necessarily telling our children they're too young to have these conversations yet, or even being more intentional about having conversations around money, finance, life insurance, trusts and wills, and just real estate altogether, and making it the family business, right? Like it's the family's business, but it's family business.
You know what? I kind of like that. I think I may want to change what I wanted to call my estate firm to being called the family business.
Yeah.
Because that's what it is. And with that being said, like my 5-year-old, I make sure she knows, okay, baby, when mommy's gone, you're responsible for Charlie. And I say she's responsible for Charlie because Charlie is autistic. Like literally in my trust, Charlotte is the last leg of my trust. She's responsible for all my assets. And so I have her come with me. I have her watch how I move with clients so she can just see how to talk to people. Because what we fail to realize is our kids are intimidated just to talk to people. And when they get out to go apply for a job, if they saw you converse just with ease, guess what they're going to do in their interviews? They're going to converse with ease. And so we think what we're protecting them from, we're actually hurting them in other areas, not even just finance, just in operation and existence.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, and it also is a wake up call for us adults too, is making sure that the things we do are like things kind of similar to like social media, right? Like when they say like, don't put stuff on social media that if it was leaked to the world, you would be embarrassed, you know, by it. Like really stand on that. And it's kind of like, are you happy enough with the job that you're having or the things that you do on a day-to-day basis where you even feel comfortable and confident to introduce your kids to that life when they're old enough to understand, you know, how to have these conversations and how to maybe take your place doing it if they needed to, or if you needed them to. Now, granted, you know, everything is not necessarily for them, but I feel like to a certain extent, if it's taking up that much of your time in your life, it should definitely be a part of, their life as well.
And it could just be in baby steps. Like, I'm not saying, hey, Charlotte, this is how you do a real estate closing.
Right.
But when I bought my building, Charlotte, I gave her a stack of papers and she was sitting there signing with me. She was like, okay, I can do this too, mommy. And she was 3.
Wow.
And she had, like, she was signing them papers with the fear. I'm like, man, you sign better than I did.
That's cool. All right, 3 years old, you teach her how to sign. She already knew how to write in cursive?
Well, my son knew how to write in cursive at 3, but she knew how to at least scribble some lines on some paper.
Yeah,
like,
it really ain't in cursive no more. Your signature. My signature definitely ain't cursive. I just scribble.
Me too. Like I got a P, a D, and I'm done. So, but it was just her being in that moment, having that experience is something. Like I'll give an example. When I was my parents were teenagers, so my grandmothers raised me. So I would go to work with my mom's mom, and the reason I have a gift to talk to every generation, I watched my mom's mom talk to every generation. I saw how she talked to the 80-year-olds versus how she talked to the 40-year-olds versus how she talked to the teenagers. And I shifted. I've learned to be a chameleon. So when I'm talking to Miss Mabel, who's in her 90s, is not, yes, Miss Mabel, I'm a lawyer. Hey, mama, yeah, this is how we're going to do this and this is what we're going to do. You got some questions for me? All right, let's go through those questions. It's a different energy. You shift as a person. And I learned that by watching my grandmother. And she knows she taught me that. But now she's like, I don't know how you do that. I'm like, I learned that from you, sir.
Right.
And she's like, oh, okay.
That's
and that gave
cool.
her joy. Just knowing she taught me something by just being who she naturally was.
And that's how we learn the best anyway, right? Not necessarily by sitting someone down and saying like, look, read this, regurgitate it back to me. And that's how I know you learned it. It's kind of like having them see it be done, them practicing doing it themselves. That's the best way to learn. And that's like personally how I learn, myself. Speaking of learning, I felt like back in the times when I was doing a lot of wholesaling, that's when I was really at the peak of the things I was learning about real estate. And as we were having the conversation last time about the estate planning, there was one situation, a scenario that I see come up a lot that we didn't get a chance to talk about, which is the situation of like, we mentioned the baby boomers. And a lot of times our baby boomers, our grandparents had like 3, 4, 5 kids. So, your parents had like 4 or 5 siblings. And then now at this point, each of those siblings might have 2 to 3 kids. And so now you have about 8 cousins that are in some regard entitled to the family home.
Right.
Right. And I've seen this a lot where the grandparents have passed and one of the siblings just moved into the home, but no one's trying to like assume any ownership of it. They're just living there. So that was the agreement. That's easy. But then what happens when that person then passes? And then now it's a decision that has to be made on who gets what of the home, or, you know, the home has been, you know, lived in for so long. It may even need repairs, but no one wants to necessarily make those repairs because they don't own it. So like, what is the best way to go about a situation like that where you know, if someone wanted to purchase the property or if somebody just wanted to go sell the property, you know, it's going to go through probate and there's going to be like 8 parties involved in this transaction.
So, yes.
I know that's like a loaded question.
No, it's not a loaded question. Actually, I experience that more often than not. As you were telling me, I had one probate case run through my head, one file that I'm working on now running through my head. And it's just been my experience in our community. So the key is we can't wait. We make so many assumptions that, oh, well, it's in mama's name and it's going to be okay. And it's not going to be okay. And so what I encourage is our hypothetical that grandma has already passed, or is grandma still alive?
No, so the situation is, and I've seen this multiple times, is maybe the grandparents have passed, but like the aunt might be living in that home, but it's technically entitled to all the siblings, but the aunt is living in the home.
So what I want to tell, and I want to remind everybody, because here's where I have the biggest issue with us. We always be like, well, you didn't help mama. You didn't do this. You didn't do that. Well, when mama doesn't have a will, it don't matter. You have to follow the laws of the state of Georgia. So if it is 5 siblings, all 5 siblings have equal share to that house. I don't care if nobody ever put a penny in on that house. All 5 siblings has it. And then if one of those siblings die off and they got kids, their kids are entitled to their share. And if they don't have kids but they're married, their husband is entitled to their share. So we have a habit of trying to disinherit people because we feel like, well, they didn't do this in life. It don't matter. When you don't set up the rules, which is the will or the trust, you got to follow the law. And the law says everybody has it. And so that's coming from me. That's coming from the rules of the laws of the state of Georgia when you die intestate. So if you don't want to run into that situation, when grandma die, the siblings need to make a decision on what to do. And I think the problem with our community is we're afraid to make that decision because if we make that decision, we become responsible. And everybody wants to not be responsible, but reap the benefits of the aftermath when things get taken care of. Right.
So like, at this point, it's like the grandparents already have passed, but at this point now, it's no more waiting. The siblings have to pretty much now talk. You have to talk about what we're doing with this situation.
Yes, we got to stop sticking our head in the sand because so there's a statistic that says 30% of the properties owned in the state of Georgia are owned by dead or dying people. Almost a third of the properties owned in the state. And guess who probably holds a lot of that? Us. Yeah. Because we don't want to be responsible. We don't want to do what we got to do. We don't want nobody in our business. Yeah. And it ain't your business at that point. It's the entire family's business. I had one estate, the aunt was like, well, I'm the only living heir. No, you're not. You're the only living child, but you're not the only living heir. And we have to take time to learn the law. So this will tell you something about me. When I was in undergrad, I lived in England for a year, and I was at my blackety blackest. Like I probably was on the verge of being a Black Panther, right? Okay. But what I loved about the Panthers was they had a pamphlet with the law in it, and they equipped our community with the law. And we need to equip ourselves with the law because if you know the law, nothing can be taken from you. Like, for example, tax deeds in the state of Georgia. Do you know that technically they can't do a tax sale on a dead person?
I did not.
Technically they cannot, but they do because guess who don't know the law? We don't. Yeah. And so we get taken advantage of and we lose our assets not realizing that they can't legally do it. And they can't legally do it because you have to serve notice. And how do you serve notice to a dead person?
They ain't getting it no time soon.
You can't.
Yeah.
So, wow, that was one little law that could protect so many of us who've lost properties to tax sales that didn't have to lose them. But we like, nah, you know what? It's gone. Why? Why is it gone? That is the most valuable. They're not making new land.
Right. Wait, so if they can't, how did they lose it to the tax sale
Because they do it anyway. Certain counties do it regardless. Fulton County, DeKalb County do it regardless. The other counties know the law, so they won't do it. They'll wait till an administrator is established for the estate before they can sell it. Because that's the only way the estate can be acknowledged, because it has a representative. But other counties, because it's about the money, they just move on and keep it moving. And then hope and pray nobody ever comes back to say something.
Dang. So, wow, I'm still trying to wrap my head around this. So they do it anyway, and most of the times they get away with it because we just don't know.
Or we don't care.
Or we don't care. Damn, that's sad.
Yeah, it is sad.
But what happens as soon as, like, okay, so let's say they don't. And you can't do a tax sale on a dead person, but let's say now the home is now, I don't know the real estate terms, but is reassumed by one of the living children.
Okay.
Now, what happens then in that situation? Are those taxes still owed on that property?
It's still owed, though, so those kids need to start paying it. They need to.
The current or the past due?
All of them.
Oh.
Because technically the taxes are still due. So if the kids ever at any point decide to actually probate the estate, now you have a representative. Now they can do a serve you with notice because the estate has a body that can receive notice. And so we got to be responsible. And then the crazy part though, when I look at the tax bills, I'd be like, y'all lost this house for $1,000 because the taxes weren't nothing.
Right.
Or you lost this house for $3,000. You have a whole house in an area where houses are worth $500,000 and up, and you just gonna let it go because you want to live in this apartment somewhere off in the middle of wherever you think is popular, but you could have rebuilt grandma's house and had a $500,000 house.
Wow. Yeah, that's tough. And I think the biggest thing is that going back to the longer we wait after our parents pass and those taxes are just not being paid, then all of a sudden, it's a huge debt. Yeah, right. It's a huge debt now.
And then the longer we wait too creates more division. So let's just say grandma had 3 kids. Those 3 kids were best friends. They work better together. But those 3 kids had 3 kids, and now one of them is dead. Now you have a whole group of people that didn't have that same connection as those siblings that has a voice in the situation. And even though we want family, it's like we want to feel like we're all in alignment, we're not. And they have a different perspective than Bobby, Johnny, and Sue, who watched Mama build that house from scratch, who saw the value of it and wanted to keep it in the family. They like, look, we can sell this and make some money.
Wow.
And so it's better when you have a line of people in agreement to work together versus letting that line of people pass off and it goes to people who have no connection to each other. Because even though we're cousins, like I have cousins that I don't even know. And then having to make a decision with somebody I don't know is a lot different than having to make a decision with somebody I grew up, slept in the same bed with for years.
Yeah. Yeah, that it is two totally different situations.
It is very.
Because a lot of times our cousins grow up in whole different states. And don't understand, wow. So kind of dialing it back a little bit and just where do we just familiarize ourselves? If you can speak to the people that are listening to this that are like, damn, I want to do better. Where can we just familiarize ourselves with these laws? Like by situation, like knowing like if I'm in this situation that we're talking about, where can I just familiarize myself with what I need to do and how I'm protected, or like a weak spot in the situation that I need to address right away. So
all laws are public, so you can always research the law themselves. And you know what? I don't know of any specific resources, because when I look at probate attorneys' websites, they don't really give you the nuts and bolts. They kind of just give you like, oh, come see us. We can help you get through it. Mm-hmm. But the beautiful part is we have such amazing tools. Like, I got ChatGPT, and I got the paid version, and I nicknamed mine Chad because there's this voice. And Chad, it sounds amazing. Mm-hmm. But talk to your your AI, and AI will sit down and help you walk through the scenario based on the statistics the information it found online. Or you reach out to an attorney like me who cares. Mm-hmm. Like, sometimes I may not charge for a consult just to give you some guidance on how to move, because sometimes it's good just to know how to move.
Yeah, speaking of, I gave you a call a couple weeks ago, Pavi, and you kind of regrounded me in the time that I really needed it, because, not to, give too much detail, but, we were in a situation where, we thought we was going to have to like sue a major bank because of discrimination.
Right.
And you just kind of like, regrounded me. It's like, hey, I don't think that is not discrimination necessarily. It's just unfortunate that some banks are disorganized, and you just seem like you're going through a really disorganized bank. And so realizing that, I'm like, dang, she might be right. How do you see those red flags before you get into, these relationships with these banks to make major life decisions like buying a piece of real estate or buying a car or whatever it might be?
So your red flag doesn't come through you knowing the bank. The most integral person in every person's life when they're buying a house is their agent. Mm-hmm. And so it's key that your agent is aware of who they're working with and how their system works. Because all it is a system. Mm. So if your agent isn't aware of how your lender's process works, that's a problem for you.
That's where we went wrong, because we had two recommendations that our agent gave us. Mm-hmm. And I think the situation was not knowing. We thought we knew more. We thought we knew better. We was like, we don't want to work with either of them. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't because of necessarily like they were disorganized or anything. It was more so like the process of like them asking for all of this and them not asking for this and then asking for it later, and then just getting feelings and wanting to go with somebody else. And then next thing I know, I get a referral from somebody, and I was like, oh, first referral, boom, that's the person we're going with. And that's where we probably went wrong.
So, no, I'm not going to say that, because the process is always going to be the process. What my problem is in this industry is there's no realistic expectations set up on either side from the beginning. So for a buyer, if I was a real estate agent, and it's only because I've done this for years, 12 years to be exact, I would say, hey, this is what's going to happen. When you apply to any lender, because it's pretty much the same thing, they're going to request these documents from you. What I'm going to suggest you to do is keep those documents in a Google Drive. Here's why. And you're going to update those documents because they're going to ask you for monthly bank statements. They're going to ask you for statements explaining why this cash went out, where this money went, why this money went here. Go ahead and be proactive. So each month when your statements get available, upload it into that Google Drive. And we're going to share that Google Drive with your loan officer. Want to know why?
So they're going to ask for it anyway?
They're going to ask for it anyway. So you just constantly remind them, hey, we're updating the Google Drive. All those documents that we've already submitted are already in there, so you can pull them if you miss them. And then we're uploading the new bank statements, and every time we feel like it's something that you need us to explain, it's already uploaded in that Google Drive. So it's in one central location for you, your agent, and your loan officer. And
just make sure you add them and don't give them editing access so they can delete stuff.
Exactly. You don't give them editing access, but they can review it, right? Yeah. And so now there's no excuse. Like, you didn't send me, hey, Bob, remember that Google Drive we set up from the beginning of this process? Now agents are teaching their clients to be proactive. And then agents are also teaching their clients, hey, it ain't going to be one time you send this over. You're going to send this over about 6 times. So just let's go ahead and find a way where we can send it over 6 times without having to send it over 6 times, and you don't get frustrated. Yeah. And that's with every lender.
With every lender. It's just so tough because, again, it sounds so good, and this is perfect timing too, because this is going to be a situation that I could see a lot of us running into next year, especially if Kamala Harris wins the election, because right now she's promising, I'm not sure if others are familiar, but she's promising $25,000 in down payment assistance for first-time home buyers.
Okay, so guys, here, I'm going to be honest. I'm going to vote. I have a responsibility to vote. I'm going to vote how I'm supposed to vote. Let me just put that where that is. But whenever a president makes a promise to you, they can't fulfill those promises. Period.
And I didn't have confidence. I didn't vote solely off of that.
No, I voted based on responsibility.
Right. But I know some people hear that and it was like, oh, that's why I'm going to vote. Because I have a few issues with that statement. One, even if it is possible, that's not really free money. That's going to show up in other ways, like inflation of goods and services. One,
Increase in taxes,
right? Because it all throws off like the
natural flow of the economy.
Exactly. It's going to affect it that way, and then also it's going to affect the market, because now you're going to have a flood of buyers who are first time just trying to get that 25,000, not necessarily knowing or being in a position to really buy, but just to get that. And now we're going to enter an automatic seller's market. So really, you're even going to lose that 25,000 off of overpaying for properties, because now they have the power to say, oh, I want 300, but since I got 8 offers, because they all got this 25, I want 325 or 350 and whatever that might be.
Basically what happened during the pandemic, where people were buying and selling houses like they were buying and selling stock. And I got so excited because my minor is in economics. So this is like what I get chills by discussing this stuff. But you explained it like to a T. And so how do you not get led into a seller's market?
Yeah. With
already inflated prices.
Yeah.
So what we as Americans don't understand, that our interest rates have been suppressed to be the rates that they are. We are the only country that are in the single digits. Naturally, our interest rates should be higher.
Wow.
Based on how the systems move, they should be higher. But we're suppressing them so that our market doesn't crash. But guess what happens when you keep a dam together through wood and nails? It's going to burst.
So, okay, wow. I mean, we have 5% now. People were complaining about 7 to 8%, and that's still single digits.
Yeah, which is something you really shouldn't complain about, because that's actually a great rate.
And I remember someone said that his interest rate, who was I talking to? It was an OG saying their interest rate when they first bought their home was like 16%.
Yes.
And I'm like, well, we complaining about 7, 8%. That's damn good. That's because it's only because at one point interest rates are at 3%.
Right.
And I think that was like after COVID or right before COVID or something like that.
Interest rate hit 2 to 1% after COVID, but after the crash in 2008, interest rates went down to 3% in order to allow the real estate market to be rebuilt. And so now we're keeping these prices inflatedly low. Well, we're keeping the rates low, but our prices are going up.
Yeah.
And so we're paying more for a house that is not worth what the house is worth.
Wow.
And so if we keep running to the market and like going with these trends, we're going to keep inflating the prices until we force a crash.
Yeah.
Which will level out the prices, which really is what needs to happen. And then the interest rates can be where they need to be.
Right. So where do you think interest rates need to be? Like, we talking 15, 16? Don't say 20%.
I don't know exact. So I did study economics, but I haven't been.
Right.
I'm not an economist, so I would say we need to find an economist to say what the interest rates in the United States need to be so we can have a healthy economy.
Wow.
Because that's the key. We don't have a healthy economy. We have a very sick economy.
Very volatile.
And it's very volatile. And so we're trying to put in these. The funny thing is, we argue that we're a capitalistic society, but we're making socialistic moves in order to keep the economy where it is. Because if you allow the market to run free, we would have been different. We would be screwed, actually.
That part.
And so when we go and we listen to politicians and argue against certain things, we need to understand what that means. So for us being able to have interest rates at 5 and 4 and 6, that's socialism. So you want a being to argue, well, no, we want a free capitalistic society. Know what that really means. know what it really means to have a laissez-faire market where you leave it alone and let it do what it do.
Sounds like the Wild Wild West.
It is the Wild Wild West.
So going back to that $25K down payment assistance grant, you said that they can't really promise that.
You can't. So guess who make the rules when it comes to money?
The banks?
Congress. And guess who don't vote for Congress often enough?
Most of us.
Most of us.
Right.
So we can't get mad that we don't get the things that these presidents promise because we don't give them the team that they need to have. So I made this post because I'm a nerd. I analogize our political parties to like Georgia and Alabama playing each other, right? And our presidents are like the quarterback, right? But if you don't give the quarterback a receiver that can run it into the end zone, how are we going to win the game?
Or some blockers to give them enough time
Thank
to make the
you. Right.
Yeah.
So that's when you go in and you vote. You pay attention who you're voting for, your senator, your House of Representatives. You're paying attention to who you're voting in your state, your governor, your lieutenant governor. All those roles are key. But we show up to the big game. This is the big game where we pick who our quarterback is. But we don't show up when we depicting their defensive line.
Yeah. And I think granted, we all need to be more intentional of finding information. If we want the information, you can go find it. But also, you're voting for all these things around, not all of them, but a lot of these players, you are voting for November 5th, come November 5th. And the only thing that frustrates me is for the last 90 days or so, we've only been hearing from like the president and vice president candidates.
Right.
One. And even when we do hear from them, most of their time is spent telling us what's so bad about the other person instead of telling us what policies they believe in for the most part until we get to the end.
Right. So communication, I studied communication in college too. What communication tells you is if you set forth a rumor, you don't know where that rumor came from, so you believe in the rumor. We have a bad habit of leaning into the negative information, so it's very hard to actually listen to the positive information. So they put those things that we think is very detrimental to that person, because that's what you're going to remember. So it's playing on your psychology. And as it relates to the promotion of the president's
other candidates, period, like Senate.
So here's how the other candidates in this election benefit. So if I know you're pro-Democrat, I'm not going to have to campaign as much because I know if you get out there and vote for the Democratic president nominee, you're going to vote Democrat on everything else. And vice versa. So now we're not even using your brain anymore. You're just buying into a concept that may or may not benefit you.
Right.
Because there may be a Republican senator who speaks to you like, no, I think we need more jobs in Georgia or this, and this. But you pick this person because they have a D by their name.
Yeah.
And not really know who they are. So that's why we don't have that. Because the funny thing is when I was walking here, I walked here, by the way. When I was walking here, I was like, why don't we have a voter book? Like, in my mind, what it looks like is each candidate has a list of questions that they have to answer. It has their picture and it has their name. And before you go into the poll, you can sit there and thumb through this magazine that be like, okay, this person is running for judgeship, or these books can be mailed to the communities prior to the election.
Instead of all them damn postcards.
Instead of all those postcards, and it's by this neutral agency who just collects the data from the different campaigns, put it in a book, publish it, and distribute it. So now you have a way where you don't even have to research it. It's all in one place, but the information was provided by that person. And they have a strict requirement to just answer the certain questions that you need answered.
Yeah. That's actually a really good idea. I would prefer that than them telling me so many different times that I have a voter score and I can know the voter score of my friends. I don't care about the voter score of my friends. I would rather know of the stuff that they can. So like take that same energy. I'm speaking to whoever that organization is. Can't recall you off the top of my dome, but take that same energy and skip out on the voter score. Just tell me the candidates, what they're like for and what they're against. I like that.
That's peer pressure. And so what the tactics that are being used in this election is to play on your psyche. And so it's embarrassing because they're making us not seem like intelligent people who can make a decision based on actual facts.
Right. You hitting all the nerves right now too.
My bad.
No,
I
it's
didn't mean
good.
to.
Because this the last semi rant that I'm gonna go on, because you said something there too with the playing on the psyche, and now it's what I see with, and I was thinking about this on the way here.
Okay.
Recently I just saw a clip of Glorilla performing at Kamala Harris's most recent rally in, I think, Philly or something like that. And prior to, she had Meg Thee Stallion. And it's like, all right, I'm not saying I don't listen to either of those. Not all the time, but hip hop to me now, especially a lot of these artists, unless you listen to like a J. Cole or Lecrae or something like that, rap is like that piece of cake that you probably shouldn't be eating because you just had pizza the night before, and like you're supposed to be eating healthy. So like every now and then you might dabble in some sweets, but you really should be, not indulging in it because it's not good for your body. That's how I feel about a lot of these artists and their lyrics. Mm-hmm. And so, yes, I might listen to it every once in a while on the car ride to work or to a basketball game or whatever. But that doesn't mean that I want it paired with my politics.
Well, let's look at the most. Okay, so did I tell you I was a history major too?
No, you did. I feel like you were everything at this point.
Well, I like to learn.
Yeah, okay.
I love learning, but I was a history major, and I would study those people in history that nobody liked because I wanted to know why they were able to do the things they were doing. Mm. And so the one person I studied when I lived in England was Hitler. Mm-hmm. And the reason I studied Hitler is I'm like, how did one man convince a whole country to kill off a whole group of people? Mm-hmm. He met them where they were. Mm. And so Glorilla, Meg Thee Stallion, that's their way of meeting certain people where they are. And you may not have gotten them out any other way. Right. But they rock with Meg. So if you rock with Meg, I'm coming out for you. That's the beauty of propaganda. Yeah. That's how propaganda works. You meet the lowest common denominator where they are. That's how the Republicans meet poor white people. It's like, I will make you feel important by saying you're better than this group. And because you're associated with me, you're better than this group. So that makes you feel better about your economic situation, even though this is really a class war. But I'm going to meet you where you are so you don't feel insecure about where you are. So you can come support me on my bull. Mm. That is how propaganda works. Yeah.
It's definitely propaganda. I'm not ignoring it for what it is, because we call it what it is. It is what it is.
We call a spade, and that's a spade.
And it's just so, for me, it's sad to see that is the interpretation of what is needed to get us to the polls.
Well, it's not us. So I am targeting the groups that I don't think is going to come, that I need to come. I'm going to target those millennials that checked out. I'm going to target those Gen Zers that checked out because nobody is speaking to me. Mm-hmm. And this is how, okay, cool. You woke me up a little bit. Like, those kids have issues that no one really wants to discuss. Mm. Those politicians don't really want to discuss how important it is to figure out a way to have mental health in our health care. Mm-hmm. Because that's what we need. We got a group of kids that went through, I don't know, maybe 3 years of having to be at home. Yeah. That's
schooling online,
That's almost Stockholm. Mm-hmm. So, but we don't want to address those things. So let me get you excited.
That's really tough, and that's a good point too, because COVID changed a lot. It changed a lot in politics. It changed a lot socially. It changed a lot for real estate. It changed a lot in corporate. What were some of the, because you've been doing this for so long, what were some of the biggest changes pre-COVID to post-COVID that you've seen in the real estate market as far as like processes and like buying and selling?
So the process is the same, unfortunately, and I wish somebody would figure out how to do it better. But what I have seen change between prior COVID and after COVID is just the ridiculously inflated prices and how builders are building. So I have this thing where I think it's important to build affordable houses, but every builder wants to have this home run where they build this $500,000 house with all this stuff in it that is Instagrammable. Mm-hmm. And so that's the difference. You had a market where people will build houses that people can live in. Now people are building houses that people can't afford to live in.
But they want to live in.
But they want to live in, they
Right.
just can't afford it.
Yeah.
And so you run into this risk of you having all these empty homes and all these people who need spaces to go, and you don't know what to do with it. And then you have all these, the other issue that happened that wasn't existent is all these corporations that own these houses.
I was about to say that's what happens when nobody can afford to buy them. The
You
hedge
got
funds buy them.
And so then now what's gonna happen when the hedge funds start to fail? Are we gonna build out the hedge funds in order to keep the real estate market looking how we need it to look so we can function? And that's the problem. So we got a problem that we don't have a solution to.
Yeah. Affordable housing is an interesting concept because I feel like there's a right way to do it and then there's still a wrong way to do it.
What's your wrong way?
I feel like the wrong way to do affordable housing is the traditional way that we've seen it done up north with like the
Projects?
yes. And that has been traditionally how I've seen. That's the only way I know of. And like now I see it here as like the apartment complexes.
Okay.
Where they're just building a whole bunch of apartment complexes to just put everybody, and we're not calling them projects because, you know,
They look
might
nice.
they look nice and they're in nice, somewhat nicer neighborhoods.
Right.
And what they do is they reserve like 30% of those units for affordable housing.
Right. Well, you do have some positives. So you like have your habitats who build houses for people, and or your NACA programs where you can get a first time home buyer and they help you find a house within a certain range. But I agree, multifamily is a quick way to throw a bunch of people in a box. And then you throw a bunch of people in a box that don't necessarily agree with each other. So you don't get that sense of community.
And then you don't, and it's poorly managed, and you don't take care of that box, and
And
now
then that box
we
now
don't
becomes a
agree, and then
project.
we angry because you know.
And it just, well, and that's the problem with this country. We have a bad habit of not learning from our mistakes.
Yeah.
And we just keep repeating them. Like I have an idea for affordable housing that would be amazing, and it's rebuilding communities. And instead of like in the north, in some places in the north, you never buy the land. You just buy the air rights technically, or the building that's on top of the land. If we could keep the land owned by one entity, like a nonprofit, and then the house is what's sold, you can decrease the value of the houses. And so it's different tools that we can employ to have affordable. Like I'm on a historic preservation board, and that's literally what we did. We took a house over on Coleman Street. It was owned by the Atlanta Land Bank, and they hold ownership to the land. We renovated the house at cost, and we sold it at cost because the land is not being transferred, and all we're doing is being reimbursed for the construction of the project. And then not only did we build a house, like restore the house, it was historically preserved. So we did two things at once, and it shows that you can do preservation affordably and provide housing. And so the problem is everybody wants something new, something sexy. They want to tear it down, build something big and monstrosity. And then the question is, how many rooms do you actually stay in?
Right.
Like I have a 1,200 square foot house. Me and my kids are all over that house because it's but that big. But if I have I own a 400 square foot building, I can only embody 300 square feet of that space at a time. Why do I need a house that big?
Right.
Unless I have like all my families in that house.
Yeah.
And so we have to change our mindset on what we need too.
Going back to the nonprofit owning the land, so when you sold that property, was it like a residential buyer? Now in that situation, do they have to pay like the taxes
They
for
pay taxes on the value of the house.
Got you.
So when you look at your property tax assessment, there's an assessment based on the land and there's an assessment based on the house. And so basically the assessment on the house, that's what they pay. And the nonprofit still has the assessment on the land.
Got you. Now, is the assessment on the land waived because it's owned by a nonprofit?
Typically, there is a tax exemption that could be applied for if it's a nonprofit, if they apply for it. But if it isn't, then they pay taxes on the land, which is still less, but it's paid for by an entity that is able to generate money through grants and endowments and things like that.
So if you were to buy like a piece of land for like, okay, so I'm gonna just be real. I have a couple members of my family where we talk pretty consistently about how we can get ready to purchase land for like a family compound. Looking for something like 40, 50, 60 acres. Probably don't need anything more than that. But would it be wise to purchase the land using a nonprofit and then maybe use like
Well, you remember a nonprofit has to serve certain purposes. So if you have those purposes and it meets those requirements, then yes, it's advantageous. But you still got to meet the first step of having a functional 501c3.
Right. So let's say you do. Let's assume that the 501c3 is functional. When you say that it has to meet the purpose, basically a certain percentage of that land has to be used for the purpose that the 501c3 was filed for.
The land technically has to be used for the purpose of that 501c3. Yeah.
So when you go into all these nonprofits that are like nonprofits for like
nonprofits.
There are, but let's say one that isn't necessarily a housing one, but it's for like youth mentorship and development.
Youth mentorship and development also comes into play with you have a lot of kids that don't have housing.
Right. So therefore because I feel like is vague.
It is
enough to where that still might work as a concept to be able to purchase land with a youth development nonprofit.
Right. But it still has to serve those purposes.
Still have to serve them.
Because the key is if you get audited, you don't want to get in trouble.
Yeah, you don't want to get audited for sure. I'm just trying to figure out because that's an interesting concept. And I mean, it sounds like I don't want to call it a loophole, but it's a tool that can be used
and leverage.
to leverage it the correct way so that, we have the information.
It's just always leveraging in the correct way.
Right.
That's it. So as long as you meet the rules that are required, then yes, it's acceptable, but you have to make sure you meet those rules.
Now, what if I have a nonprofit that's for youth development. And now what if I've taken parts of that land for like agriculture to teach them like agriculture and then another part to teach them like film.
There's different exemptions. So as long as you meet those exemptions, then you get those tax. And then so what you do is when you go into the situation, before you do it, you figure out what things that the county will exempt for tax purposes. And then if those are the things that you seek to do, then portion out those portions of the land for those tax purposes and get those exemptions.
I'm gonna have to think about this because now you got me thinking. I'm like,
well, the key with everything is knowing the rules. If you know the rules, you know how to play the game.
Yeah.
So first, understand the rules. First, and my thing with the rules is you can bend over the line. You just can't step over it. So you just got to know how far you can bend.
Right. Yeah. Like the ball. Yeah. So as long as like in football, like as long as my foot don't touch that line, but I hold the ball over it, I'm good.
I'm good. Right.
Yeah.
But you want to make sure you're in order.
Okay.
Because we follow, even though they're the rules, there are the rules for us too.
And that's why I was kind of tiptoeing around how I was
I was tiptoeing around how I was explaining.
Yeah, because it's different. It's still different for us.
It's still different for us.
I want to take a step backwards because you had mentioned about the processes in real estate. Like, unfortunately, they haven't changed, and you wish they were better. And you said there are some ways that they could do it better. Mm-hmm. What did you mean by that? Like, how can it be done better?
So you remember how I told you the initial thing with setting up that Google Drive where you can share with your loan officer and upload it, and then they always have access to it? That's one of the things that slows things down in the process is document collection. The other thing is they have a requirement that they're supposed to give you your closing disclosure 3 days before closing.
Yes.
Have you seen your closing disclosure?
Yes.
No, you haven't.
What do you mean?
You've seen a closing disclosure. You haven't seen your closing disclosure. You will probably not get your official closing disclosure until tomorrow afternoon.
Even though it said final numbers.
Do you trust me?
I trust you. I'm just so confused because
here's what I come to the table with.
Right.
I'll come to the table with a buyer who's like, wait, these aren't the numbers I saw yesterday. So you never received your final closing disclosure.
Damn. I mean, that's the whole point of the disclosures.
That's the whole point of the disclosures. And then
Even after wired, like funds have been wired.
So I'll try to get them closest to what I can so they can wire me the right amount. But sometimes we have to tell them, bring in a check. So you can, if in case there's a difference, because sometimes we don't finish balancing. We get close, but there's something else that has to be added or something that's missing. So that should be done 3 days before. There needs to be a streamlined process for how the processors and the underwriters go through and review the documents. There should not be a reason that underwriting is still reviewing it the day before closing. Like,
yes, Pavielle,
I mean,
agree.
if these are the documents that got me approved, why are you still reviewing it the day before closing?
Yes.
I get that there's 1, 2, 3 audits, but can we have those audits earlier?
Right.
And if we have those audits in the system, then couldn't we have closed sooner? So those are the things that get to me, because I'll be like,
and are these like stall, like, so
they're not stall tactics. It's just, it's that much. So my question then is, are they understaffed? Do they have enough people doing these jobs where that it's not falling on 3 desks to review 50 loans per person per the 3 people?
Yeah.
And have to get them out by the end of the month.
Yeah, because that was the most stressful part for us, was hearing like they would say like, yes, the underwriter is being gone through pre-approval, and we're like, dude, our loan officer already said we got approved, yada yada yada. Like, y'all already gave us
But
confidence we could do this because of the pre-approval. Like,
But that's the other expectation I wish people would. I wish your loan, like I said, I wish your agent would walk you through this process. I wish your loan officer would walk you through that process.
right.
Because if you set the expectations in the beginning and it's clear, it makes it easier. So if I said, hey, here's how it works. You have your initial approval, which is based on your income. Then you have your secondary approval, which is based on your tax returns and these things and your bank statements. Then to get you through final approval, I have to assess the house, assess the area, do this. And with all that, plus the information you already provided me, that will give you the final approval to buy this house. Wouldn't that have been easier for you to understand?
And it will be easier for me to make sure you have everything that you need.
There we go.
Instead of staying, like, you don't know how many times we've asked in verbatim in an email, like, is there anything else you need from us to ensure we can close on this day? Because like I told you, our closing got pushed back from the 3rd to 21st to so like 3 times the closing got pushed back. And so each time before we got to that date, we're asking like, anything you need from us, yada yada, no, we're all good. And then boom, something that they need from us. The first time it was like, they're still waiting on employment verifications. But I'm like, employment verification seems like the first thing you would have done to even grant some type of pre-approval, let alone a final approval. So,
Well, you got to do the employment verification twice, probably. One closer to closing to make sure you didn't quit your job before you sign for it, and then one at the beginning.
But but that part, I would
But if you
understand that if you
explain
would have
that to
told me that,
me, right.
Because that makes sense. Okay, you want to make sure I'm still working there. Cool, fair enough. I would want to make sure that somebody I'm giving this huge loan to still got a job too. But explain that.
But no one explains the process. They tell you, hey, give me your stuff. And then they go away into this dark corner and you're like, okay, what's going on? Oh, you want something else from me? Why? Underwriter needs it. And so if we would communicate differently and better, and that's the only issue with the process, it's the communication piece. And the reason I'm harping on this, because I get yelled at all the time, is like, your office doesn't communicate. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I don't communicate. I tell you when your file's open. I tell you when title's back. I tell you when your title is trash. I tell you I'm fixing your title. I tell you we're sending documents to the lender. What other communication do you want from me?
Yeah, I mean, from the attorney standpoint, I feel like that's about the communication that you need.
You pretty much need. And the problem is, communication is tricky, because if I'm not communicating what you want to hear, you don't say I communicate.
Yeah. Speaking of the communication, how can, like, we got the Google Drive, how can we avoid like finding out things too late? Like I feel like there was a situation where we found out that repairs were needed like 2 weeks after the appraisal was done. 2 to 3 weeks after the appraisal was done.
So if there was benchmarks established throughout the process, and this is just a critique of the system. So say, for instance, the benchmark is we received the appraisal this day. We reviewed the appraisal within 48 hours to let them know what needs to be done, then it wouldn't be a 2-week period. But I think the difficulty is, do we have enough people doing these roles?
Right. Was somebody looking at the file as soon as it came in?
Right.
That's all it really boils down to.
And that's usually where, because that's where we drop the ball. Sometimes I'll get a title back and I'll be working on 30 things and I forgot to look at that title and I thought I did. And I clicked on it. And sometimes when you click on an email, you forget to go back to it, right? And so then you're like, oh crap, how did I miss that? And it's like, oh, I clicked on it by mistake versus clicking on it, addressing it, and doing this.
Yeah. One tool that I really like that Google has, this is a little plug-in, is, now I've never had a situation where I accidentally clicked on an email, but I have had situations where I clicked on the email and it was a lot and I was like, I can't address this right now, so I'll come back to it. Google has a feature where at the top you can create a task directly from an email.
I got to see if Microsoft has that.
I really like that because it pops up on my Google Calendar. So then like when I'm looking at my day, I can see that task to get back to that email.
I need to see if Microsoft has that because that would help me, because that's a lot of the reasons I'm behind on a lot of stuff is because it's like, yes, I know I need to do that, but that's going to take me an hour to process.
Yeah.
And I don't have an hour at this second.
Right. Exactly. And it happens all the time. And so I wonder if that's a process or if that's a situation that could help. That's running.
So it's a lot of things. And so it's systems and procedures that could adjust, but there's no general code that everybody has to follow other than they're supposed to give you your closing disclosure 3 days before closing.
Now that's it.
That's it. Pretty much.
I mean,
and follow the laws and not do predatory lending.
Yeah. I almost,
they be freestyling.
I hate that this happened. I hate that the process has been so stressful for us. But I'm not mad that I have an opportunity to be able to talk a little bit about it because I do feel like there was a lot of learning that happened and a lot of learning that can happen for our listeners to kind of avoid these situations.
Yeah.
I think the piece of game you gave from a buyer standpoint, especially like a first time home buyer, the Google Drive is game. Like that's some real good games, something that we can do proactively. Like even before you even find your lender, just like go ahead and put all your twos, the W-2s, XYZ in a Google Drive so that it's ready. What are some other things that a buyer could do that we might not have covered to prepare themselves for purchasing a home, whether it's before they get to the lending process or before they even get to the closing table?
Okay, so one of my biggest things is you have to interview who you work with as your agent because you may not have the right agent. Agents have specialties. Now, your agent was good because you knew her.
Yeah.
So when my sister-in-law was buying a house, I told her, I'm like, based on your personality, you need an agent who's a mom. Because you need some, and this is for first-time home buyers. So you need like one of those older seasoned agents who's been in the business for like as long as you've been alive, basically, because how she's going to walk you through buying that house is different than someone who is younger. Because she's like, okay, it's like she's taking her baby through this house. And she's not going to let you make a mistake.
So been in the game and as a mother.
Pretty much. Yeah. And you can tell their demeanor because when you meet them, they'll be like, you sound like my mama. Yeah, but that's good because when she gets in the house, she's like, okay, look, I get it. It's pretty. But look at this in the kitchen. You see that there? That countertop is going to be a pain in the butt to clean. It's new. It's going to crack. It's going to do this. And she can give you game that a new agent's like, oh, it's nice. It's a different experience. Now, if you're an investor and you're trying to sell a house, a newer agent is better because they know how to stage it, make it look sexy, make it look pretty for a buyer to buy. So it's different agents offer different things. Yeah. And that'll be the first step because if you have that mama bear agent, guess what mama bear agent's going to do? She's going to set you up with the expectations of what you need to do in order to get through your lending process. Then she's going to have lenders she's worked with, depending on your income level, to help you navigate the process easier. And she's going to be like, look, I remember my agent, she's like, I'm going to need you to have your tax returns, this in order, and this in order. Okay, cool. And that's how I knew to have everything already in one central location. So I didn't have a Google Drive, but I had a folder.
Right.
So whenever they asked for something, click on that folder, copy, paste. All right, bye. And I didn't have to think about it no more. I didn't get upset, but like, man, I got to find where I put that. Nope, it's in this one central folder. Yeah,
that's good. That's good. Definitely picking your team is important. And you don't necessarily always want to go with the people that that, I know Bob down the street, he's a mortgage banker, let me just go with him, right? Unless he meets the criteria what you're looking for on your team.
I'm going to tell you something. I like brokers. Don't go with brokers for your first house.
Don't go with brokers.
I would go, like me personally, I would go directly to the banks. I would go to a credit union. I would go to my local bank. I would go to someplace smaller because they have more benefits for you. A broker, yeah, they can shop it around and find different deals with different lenders. But if you have a great relationship with your bank, why not work with your bank? Because they're going to work with you. You already got your money there.
I was about to say, what does a great relationship with your bank look like? Having multiple accounts, one account is good enough?
Multiple accounts, probably been with them for years. Like, you know how a lot of people who have Navy Federal, their mom and dad were in the military, the whole family has their account with them. That's something you want.
Yeah, I don't know why we didn't go with Navy Federal. I wish we would have.
And then the cool thing about credit unions is you don't pay certain fees. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, those are the things you want to look at. Now, if you are trying to qualify for a home buyers program, some of those you have to go through brokers because they have access to the tools to get you those faster. But if you talk to your local banker, they may be able to find the same thing. So, and then it's being able to touch somebody. You know, that gift of being able to reach out and be like, hey, Bob, what's up with my file? When you walk into the bank, it's different than trying to get somebody on the phone.
Mm-hmm. That's a good one. I never heard the sentiment about the brokers. I always just assumed now granted we didn't go with a broker, but to me the thing that was attractive about the brokers that we were kind of were thinking about was because of they had multiple. They can kind of shop it around.
But you pay more fees.
And that's why we didn't end up going.
You pay more
the fees were high. It was damn, these fees are high as hell.
Yeah, you pay points to use a broker. You got to pay them to do that.
Yeah. Because that's how they get paid.
That's how they get paid, and that gets wrapped into your loan. So is it worth it?
Yeah. Yeah, that was the toughest thing. Because, I mean, personality was great. You know, the interest rate was good, you know, but at the end of the day, it was, even though the interest rate was good, it was still expensive. Like, it was a big expense.
And know this, you can buy down your interest rate. You can pay extra money. So instead of paying points for a broker, just ask, hey, look, I don't like this 6.5. Can we buy down 0.25 so I'm at 6.25? That's less than paying the broker fee. Mm-hmm. But it's not knowing you have that option to buy down your interest rate. So you pay more up front to get a lower interest rate.
Explain that to the listeners again, buying down their interest rates.
So let's just say you qualified for 6.5% interest rate. Mm-hmm. I don't know what the actual, I'm gonna make up numbers, but let's just say if you paid an upfront fee of $1,500, you can buy it down by 0.25 points. Mm-hmm. Then now you're at a 6.25 and you're just paying $1,500 more. Mm-hmm. But you're saving 0.25% over the life of the loan, which is more than $1,500.
Which I was about to say, which could be more than $1,500.
So they're that option, but not a lot of people know that they have that option. Yeah.
For us, it was, we had like some extra, this was our situation. We had some, based on our closing disclosures, we had some extra that was left over. And so what we had them do was apply that to buying down the points. Mm-hmm. So maybe not the interest rate, but we went for like,
that's the points.
Okay, so all right, so explain the difference between like the interest rate on the mortgage and then like the discount points that you see, like how much we're paying for the loan. Like what is that? What is like discount points?
So those additional, the APRs in the back end, or
I'm trying to explain where it is on like
the points for the lender's fee.
Yes, the lender's fee. Because you got two, it's like the discount point and they usually have like a flat admin fee, which is like those two fees.
So that's their origination cost.
Yes, the origination
cost. Okay, so that's the cost that they charge you to do your loan.
Right.
And that's the thing that people don't understand too. That brought up that. So you know how you were like,
because for brokers is a lot higher.
Yeah,
the bank is a little bit more reasonable. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you're getting ready because you asked me what to tell first time home buyers before they get ready, your down payment isn't just, I'm buying a house for $100,000. I got a loan for $80,000 and I got to bring $20,000 to the table. You're also paying for your lender. You're also paying for your attorney. You're also paying your transfer taxes, your interest, your prepaid interest. If you got FHA loan, your mortgage insurance premium, and you're paying for your escrow account. So that $20,000 jumps up to about another, I don't know.
I think it was like an average of like if you got FHA and you do the 3.5% down, imagine another 2.5 to 3% for like those.
So
closing
that's
costs.
what you're paying. You need to prepare for. You're not just paying your down payment. You have to pay closing costs. And even when your seller is contributing to your closing costs, you still are going to have to come to the table with some money.
Yeah, with the down payment.
Right.
And that's what they don't mention when they say like, oh, we can give you, unless it's specifically down payment assistance. But when they say like, we can give you X towards closing costs, some banks will still require you to pay the full 3.5% or 3% or whatever percent of the down payment.
So if you're looking to put down 3.5, prepare to save 5% to cover your closing costs too.
Yeah. That's, again, they didn't tell us that.
Yeah.
So what we did when we had that excess, we just applied that to the buy down of the discount points on the origination fee. So I think it was originally like 1.9, which I was like, damn, that's high, to just a flat 0.1.
Gotcha. Yep. Because usually you pay anywhere from 1 to 3 points for origination, depending on the type. Well, it depends on the type of loan. Like a hard money loan, you're paying 3 points.
Oh yeah. Okay, it's different.
Yeah.
All right. So it's been a minute since I even heard that option, hard money. Like,
look, if you're a first time home buyer, stay away from hard money loans. Period.
Right. Tell our listeners what is a hard money loan and why is it so like stay away from?
Hard money loans are more like private investment lenders, and they're not like regulated by the federal government. So they can charge you higher points, like origination points, but they can also charge you higher interest rates. And then their loan terms are a little different. They don't always give you 30-year
It was
loan.
usually like, it could be shorter.
It's like a year.
That's like, how you think I'm paying a $300,000 loan in a year?
And it's typically for an investment property. So just stay away from hard money loans unless you're an investor. And be strategic when you're an investor with using other people's money. And I want to make sure everybody understands this. It's an economic concept. There's no such thing as a free lunch. Anything you do, you pay for. Always remember that. So if somebody say, I can get in this with no money down, not true. Always remember you're paying something. Yeah.
It's funny you said there's no such thing as free lunch, because even like thinking like not metaphorically, but like literally on free lunches, like for you to qualify for free lunch, it meant that you were in a certain class.
Yep.
And once you left that class, meaning i.e. made more money, you didn't get free lunch. So that free lunch came with you staying in a situation that you felt like you needed and wanted more.
Yep.
So that was a good analogy. Going back to the hard money, I remember a situation we used hard money, and it was like the only situation we used hard money was just because we was wholesaling. So it was just to come up with the funds because the specific attorney didn't allow pass-through funding.
So you had to have a transactional fund.
Right. So we had to have the funds to technically close.
And then sell it.
And then we just gave them the hard money lender the funds right back at closing.
Yep.
Yeah. So that was like the only situation that we used. And even then we were like, oh, I don't know if we want to use this hard money loan. So, and it was at like they still charged us for it. It was like 1%.
Man, if I could be a transactional funder,
I'm like, yo, they like,
my money sits in somebody's escrow account for a day, and I make a point off of it.
Yeah, I'm like, yo, we give it right back.
If I get sexy with it, I charge a doc prep fee with that and a processing fee.
Cause what's 1 point on 100,000, 1,000, right?
Right.
So like you giving somebody 300,000, that's 3,000 you just made off just moving your money there and getting it right back in a day. Like that's a
caveat is don't send my money out unless you have the other people money.
Yeah, that's a hustle. Man, all right, Pavi, it's been great. I feel like I got a little bit of what I wanted to accomplish out of this conversation, but I feel like there's still so much more, just because every time I talk to you, you're just such a wealth of knowledge, and then more things come up and like, damn, we didn't talk about this, we didn't talk about that. But just so our listeners' heads don't explode, right? Wrap us up with like 3 things you would give to a new home buyer. Let's go with the theme of, post-election, how to look at buying real estate for the first time. Because, you know, with post-elections, anything could, the market already volatile, anything could go down at this point.
Okay, you're going to hate me for saying this. Don't buy a house.
Damn.
Don't buy a house
I just bought a house, y'all.
until you know you're ready to buy a house.
Oh, okay. All right. That's a good.
There's a book. I can't remember the title, and I'll send you over the title for when you actually put on the show. But it's a concept. It's like to rent or to buy. And I think that may be it. But in most European countries, people rent. Mm-hmm. It's more affordable to rent. And so the only time you would buy a house is when it's affordable to buy versus renting. So you have to weigh, the concept is called opportunity cost. So you have to weigh the opportunity cost of renting from person B or owning your own house. Mm-hmm. And when you own your own house, it's not just paying the mortgage, just making sure the taxes are paid, making sure the repairs are done and those things, versus renting from person B who you just have to pay the rent. So before you make that decision, even though they're shining this shiny red apple at you, my mom have a joke about a shiny red apple. Think Snow White. Not all shiny red apples are good for you. Compare those two things first. So first, look at your finances and say, okay, if I buy this house, my mortgage will be, because I haven't seen a mortgage that's less than $2,500. My mortgage will be $2,500. I make $4,000 a month rent. Because you never know when something's going to fall apart.
Yeah.
Your furnace is going to break, a roof leak, and you're already in a deficit. Because what, 2,500 minus 4,000, well, 4,500, you're already at 2K.
Yeah, you're already
That's all the rest of your living expenses. So you have to be strategic. And I know it's the American dream to buy a house, but the dream is to own that house, keep that house. So you want to be in a position where you don't lose that house.
Right. That's very good feedback. You almost scared when you said don't buy a house. I thought you were going to say for another reason, but I agree. It's like, unless you're like ready and you have weighed those opportunity costs.
Yep.
I would say the opportunity cost is the reason why it was like, okay, maybe it is time, because like we were like the last of our friends to go ahead and purchase, because we was just like, this is cool, you know. But then once we had baby Kai, we're like, okay, space is a little bit tight, but we're not screaming like buy. We're like, maybe we just need to find a bigger apartment. Right. But unfortunately, like in Atlanta, it's hard to find apartments that are more than 2 bedrooms now, because just everything is the same. Right. But the biggest thing was the rent was going to go up to like $2,100, and we really liked the area we stay in, so that would be like the average of what the rent will be anywhere we went in that area. So it was like, let's see if we can find something that will be. Our
mortgage payment is less than our rent, or our rent.
Right. Price. And it's not less, but it's just like, so it is under $2,500. It's like $2,150, 20, right at 22.
So you weighed your opportunity cost. Right. And so, and even with that, like, another thing, if you are a first time home buyer, ask your agent to buy you a home warranty. Or ask your agent to ask your seller to buy your home warranty. So at least in that first year, that home warranty will cover repairs. So the first year I bought my house, my furnace went out. So I had to get my furnace fixed because I didn't have a home warranty. Which is cool because I know a bunch of builders, and I had one of my guys come fix it, and he fixed it for a little or nothing. But if you're not in a position like I am, that home warranty is a lifesaver.
Yeah. Now, is the home warranty something you go through like an insurance company get, or
it's a home warranty company? It's kind of like it's kind of like their own insurance companies, but they're called home warranties. They'll cover the house from the day you buy it, and so
for a year,
they cost on average anywhere from like $350 to $700. And then if you have to get something repaired, you pay a $50 deductible. $50 deductible versus
a water heater or a furnace costs more than $50.
There you go. So it's the perfect gift that any agent can give their first time home buyer.
Wow.
Or ask the seller to give their first time home buyer.
That's a really good gift. That's a really good idea.
Yep. So that's one of the things. So if you have that in place, and then you're going to save, because the key is saving. And the key is buying. The other thing I'm going to tell you as a first time home buyer is buy within your means. Like, I think these houses are beautiful, but you want to know how much I paid for my house?
How much?
I bought my house 10 years ago. I paid $113,000. It was in the middle of the hood. Now my house is worth $280,000, and I haven't done anything to it. My mortgage payment, this these last 2 years is the first time it's been over $1,000.
Wow.
So buy strategically. Buy what you
And why is that? Because of the property taxes being tied into that?
Mm-hmm. That's the only reason. Because my property taxes went up because the city of
'cause
Atlanta's property taxes. But
City of Atlanta property taxes is crazy.
like, where are y'all getting these numbers? But
Rick Ross live up the street.
he lived in Fayette County.
Yeah.
Shoot, we're gonna move him out of Atlanta. That's Fayette. But no, you want to buy a house you can afford.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to buy because it looks great. Make it look great. Like if you buy a house that, sure, it may not have the quartz countertops. It may not have the new sexy hardwood floors. Make it a home. That stuff don't make your house a home. It's cute for the first day you take a picture of it, but then when you get home and you leave your bag on the floor and your stuff, you ain't gonna remember it's quartz.
Yeah. And plus you got a life to live there. You know, I think when people have in their mind, I'm only going to be here for 3 to 5 years because of these statistics and these averages where people be giving like, oh, the average person is in their first home for 3 or 5 years. Then we thinking that, oh, I only got 3 to 5 years. It got to be exactly what I want it to be. But if you thinking you're going to be there for 10 plus years, you like, oh, I could wait 3 years and I could change up the floors. I could wait another 5 years and I could redo all the bathrooms and the kitchen. You know, you don't have to get everything done at once.
But even with that, if you're only in your first home for 3 to 5 years, not because you just lose your house, you're moving to your dream home. Mm-hmm. So this is your starter home. So it doesn't have to have all the bells and whistles. Mm-hmm. It needs to be a place where, okay, when I come and lay my head, I'm at peace. Mm-hmm. It gives me the safety and security I need to get up every morning and grind to get to the next level.
Right.
And it's not taxing my pockets where I feel like I hate coming to this place.
Mm-hmm. But even still, what's wrong with making that starter home the dream home?
Nothing's wrong with making that starter home the dream home, but statistically, most people don't. Because most people buy for their current situation, and then their family change, and they grow, or they decrease. Like, I got a divorce, so my family decreased, so I don't need as big of a house. And so life happens. Mm-hmm. So we typically buy for where we are in this moment.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about the person that's like looking for X, Y, Z, and especially since moving down south, I noticed that you get a lot more space, especially in like different counties like Cobb County and Gwinnett County. You get a lot more space. You know, you can use up that space, right? So the home right now may only be 1,400 or 1,200 square feet, but who's to say you can't add another 1,000 square feet and, you know, give yourself that extra space that you're looking for?
Yep, that's true. That is true. So buy a house with land.
Buy a house with some land.
Buy a house with land.
You can always add on top of it.
Or you can add an accessory dwelling in the back. It'll be like, look, I'm tired of these kids. I need a place to escape. Build you a she shed.
Yeah, something like
so
that.
you just, but the first house is not always the end all be all. So
Right.
It doesn't have to have all those bells and whistles. And like you said, you can add those things.
There's many ways to skin a cat.
Amen. That's my favorite saying.
There's many ways. All right. Well, Pavielle, it was great having you on the show. We definitely going to have you back. I'll wait until after this drops and you and I can talk to plug in some of our exciting news for our guests. But y'all, just make sure that y'all drop a like if you like this content, share, drop a comment on your favorite part of this conversation or something that you didn't know and you heard it for the first time on the show. That'd be great for us to know. Well, other than that, you just heard from Pavielle Dortch on some real estate game and some game about life, right? Just all together life and real estate and everything above. But I'm your guy, Kai Speaks. We out.